to. So welcome today to our panel session. Is recorded, and as always, I will send you all the recording in a couple of days' time. I will email you afterwards with everything that has been discussed and extra material. And also, as always, your video and audio is turned off, but there is a question box at the top. Please put all your comments and your questions into the box, and our speakers will endeavor to answer the questions and talk about the topics you would like them to discuss. So without further ado, people are still joining, but I'm sure time is of the essence. So I will hand over to our moderator team, Linda and Annika, to start the session. And I hope it will be a lovely and lively session. And if anyone had problems in this session, because it's the first time we're using GoTo, so I'm sorry in advance for this, but I will send you everything afterwards and you will have the presentations and all the material. So thank you for joining. And over to you, Linda and Annika.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Annika is going to manage the chat. I'll just ask her to introduce herself briefly, and then she'll probably turn her camera off.
Hello, everyone. I'm Annika Bennett. I work with Goldleaf, and I've been with Goldleaf for about 10 years. And Linda and I have been working together very closely on various things, including these webinars. So this is, as Andrea said, the 7th time we're doing it. And yeah, as Linda said, I will be in the background helping with technical issues if I can, and responding to chat or making sure that your questions in the chat are going to be asked.
Thank you. So as Andrea has indicated, we have two very distinguished speakers today. By chance, I met both of them exactly 10 years ago at an event in Michigan, but I had been in email communication with them before that. And I have followed their careers, which have become even more distinguished ever since. They have in recent years been huge supporters of De Gruyter projects, and they're now going to talk to us about again, fortuitously, projects about space management in at their own universities that they've both been involved in. This is a hot topic at present, and interestingly, for something that talks about something as solid as library buildings, it has metaphysical connotations too. For example, when is a library not a library? Is a library more than the sum of its parts? What makes a library live? And what does the library of the future look like, which is what they're particularly going to talk about. So it is my very great privilege to hand over to Fiona to start this session. Please, Fiona, would you continue with your presentation?
Hello, folks. It's good to see you all. Can I just check, guys, you can see my slides?
Not at the moment, Fiona.
Let's just try that again. No, the share option whilst it's coming up.
No problem.
There we go.
I will share.
How's that?
I can do this. Can you share now, Fiona? Yeah. Sharing at the bottom. You can share.
Fiona, you are muted.
Coming up, yes. You just have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, it had hidden me. It had hidden my microphone. So hopefully you can see us now. Sorry about that, guys. Don't you just love technology? So, University of Winchester. It's in the UK. It's about an hour south of London, if you're ever in this part of the world. Was one of the first capitals of England. We have the official and, of course, completely real, no mysticism at all, round table. So what the Americans would call a kind of a small liberal arts focused institution. So that just gives you a bit of a flavour for where and what we are. So we've been an institution from 1856, but the first library was built, purpose-built library was built in the 1970s. and it's all kind of been there. It was a nice little square box, 2 stories. We then added another floor onto it. We then added a much larger extension onto it. We then stuck some other study spaces onto it. All of them done very independently to each other. So whilst you can walk between them all, they're different building management systems. They didn't talk to each other. Light switches were all over in the different places. And to be absolutely honest, it was all designed always as a temple to the book. It was all about more storage space for the books, and maybe we could give the students some spaces around the edges. Lots of problems that way. And because it's the most popular building on campus, as it is in every single university campus, really hard to do any work on it, to close it down, to actually give it the kind of love and attention that it needed. So this is what it looks like currently. So that's the outside of the front, and you can almost see that they've built the additional floor on stilts. Whereas the back, the 2000 building looks very, very different. Much more modern, though the technology that was supposed to be there didn't actually work in it. So the heat gain and the sun capture all failed, making it almost like a greenhouse for the last 20 years. In one side, the other side very cold, single story windows from the 1960s or the 1980s. An interesting mix. Then we decided as a university to open a brand new building. And that piece that you can see to the right, what I like to call my aircraft wing, is another library and learning space. So we were given 2 floors of a very nice big building. You can see it's got some formal bookshelves, it's got PCs, it's got a lovely garden that you look out to, and at the right time of year you get inundated with ducklings. Really nice space, very modern, very airy, and that kind of left us behind. So I had, most of this was designed before I started at Winchester, but I had the opportunity to pull out another PC lab and instead put in an innovation space. So this is a fairly large space. We're probably talking 6 meters by 4 meters. Unfortunately, it's got where this picture is taken from is a glass wall, and then another wall with windows in it facing outside, which meant I couldn't do my full immersive VR cave, which is what I was aiming to begin with. But we've put immersive video displays, we've got large screens, we've got holograms in there, just to help students start to be able to see a different way of study, a different way of doing things, the ability to become more immersive, the ability to live in augmented and virtual environments, because more and more of our courses require that kind of simulated learning, that in situation, and we're all seeing that students are becoming much more kinesthetic in their approach to learning. So rather than just putting in another 30 PCs in here, we ripped it out and decided to be very different. And key thing was, from this space initially, it's not a teaching space. Academics are more than welcome to come in and understand it and play themselves. But the whole idea is students will come in and revisit the concepts and the spaces that they have learnt in the classroom themselves. So again, it's very much, it's a student space. Marshall Rose Library, and Marshall Rose, believe it or not, was a gentleman. It isn't some strange military type of thing. Was left behind. And so what we were looking to do is try and find a business case originally for internal reinvestment. And we had to move it away from being somewhere that was around storing book collections. We'd started to move to electronic first. We know that that's what the students prefer. They like to think they would read, but when it comes to actually taking snippets and comments and being available 24/7 where they are, that's the ebook, that's the journals. So we needed to actually downsize the physical collection. My predecessor was a great believer in building a library. I'm a believer in managing the collection, and we had lots of material from courses that we no longer run. So we just needed to rationalise and put that focus on the students, actually understand the world of our students today and going forward. Our portfolios changed, the kind of courses that we changed, the kind of graduates that we are putting out into the world are very different to when those buildings were first put in. And we needed to pivot and change. We need to understand the different demographics of our students. Most of them don't live anywhere on campus anymore. We'd always been a very campus-based institution. Certainly post-COVID, we're seeing more and more students just doing the commute and going back of an evening. So they need somewhere during the day where they can work. They can't go back to their bedrooms. They can't go back to their dorms. We have a lot of self-directed learning, and certainly in the UK, the shift from college into university is quite big. Around, before they come to us, they're very timetabled, they're very directed. At the university, they have 20-25 hours of contact time, but the rest of the time they're expected to work by themselves. And having somewhere that they can do that together is really important. We're changing assessments. The whole idea of sitting in a code sports hall for 3 hours with a pencil in your hand is not really giving us those employability skills that we want to deal with. I've already mentioned the carbon targets and sustainability. The building is absolutely awful in terms of energy management. And we need to remember that the students learn in very different ways. So that was the business case that we put forward to the university, and we got some money. And we got a new roof as a starting point. We've got around £500,000 put aside for us for 4 years. But then the Office for Students, which is an oversight body in the UK, had a round of funding that any university could put one bid forward for money. And because we'd already done all of that work around what we needed in our Marshall Rose Library, we were able to put this in. Now, I've highlighted a few things here. The first thing you'll see is the word library doesn't exist. It's the resource centre, because the great and the good do not, they have a perception in their head of what library is. And that wasn't what the Office for Students wanted to fund. So it's a complete overhaul. It's not just dabbling around the edges. Inspirational, state-of-the-art learning and collaboration. Those are key words that we wanted to use. Strategically important subjects. So again, tied back to you want more nurses, you want more midwives, you want more physios. We need to have the funding to help provide your future workforce. We need to reimagine learning, adopting new methodologies, preparing students for the workspace, and high quality dedicated space to discover, collaborate, enrich and create knowledge. That's the summary of a very long and very boring business case, which is available on the website if anybody is really sad enough to want to look. But that's the synopsis. And that's what got us the full maximum funding available at the time, which was £5.8 million to be spent in 2 years. Add that to what the library's done, and we're around 8.2 million now funding for Marshall Rose. So they gave us the money. We'd used all those fluffy words. What are we going to deliver? Of course, it's going to be a place where there's going to be books and resources and stuff. And we will have our help points. We will have fantastic library staff who are available to help and support. But we've built 12 new independent collaborative spaces. So walled in, high screens, cast to them, all of those kind of things. 3 large seminar rooms. Seminar rooms there in inverted commas because they are not to be timetabled for the academics. But we do know that seminar groups are getting larger. And so for large groups to be able to come in and work together, or 2 or 3 groups to come in and work together in a space for up to 30 students. That's available as open access when it's not booked. It's also where we put on academic skills training sessions. It's where we put on careers drop-in sessions. And of course, our digital skills team are in there doing regular sessions. So 2 or 3 times a a week, one of those rooms has skills development in there. We have 2 retreat rooms. In the UK, we're seeing a greater rise of students presenting with anxiety. So those are the ones who tell us about things. But we're also really aware that this is a very, very stressful time in people's lives. Everyone has moments. Everyone feels overwhelmed now and again. And so we've got 2 rooms where you don't have to book them in. You don't have to be a special person who has been diagnosed. You can just go in there and take a breath. And it will have soft seating, kind of, students always love them, beanbag kind of things, fidget toys, the ability to control your lighting and your heating, weighted blankets, all those kind of things, just so that people can do a reset. You can just turn around and say, okay, I'm feeling ready, I can go back out into the real world. We've got dedicated interview rooms where we have set it up where you go in and it's almost like a mini TV studio, so that students don't have to worry about setting up the kit as we did this morning, the afternoon for me, morning for some of you. It's there, it's a press a button, and they can concentrate on being their best self to get that internship, to get that job, or even to interview other people for their research, for their studies. So it's those kind of 2-way meeting points. Make a space. I say we're liberal arts, but we need to start getting our students more involved in practical building, designing, because that's where the world is going from now. So both digital and physical making is going on now with a digital humanities space. That's to get our academics back in the building. As soon as we put online journals onto the academics' desks, you stopped seeing academics come into the building. And so digital humanities, I said those seminar rooms can't be booked by academics. They all want to. So the trade-off is, well, if you plan a class to use some of the resources within the library spaces, of course you can book one of the seminar rooms. And we're hoping to drive better usage of some of those online primary resources that we've got, research skills driven by the academic, because if the academic says it's important, the students believe. We're putting in a self-serving kitchenette, not a cafe, a self-service kitchenette where they've got microwaves and hot and cold water, vending machines if they've not brought anything in, a little sink to wash their food and prep and things like that, because it's their office, it's their space. They don't have to spend money to get a refuel kind of thing. That's becoming really important for our group of students. And I mentioned we've never seen academics in the last 20 years in the library building, unless it's got a nice cafe in it. We also have a real problem with our postgraduate research students. They always feel that they've got to have a separate room. Most libraries have a separate room. It's very rarely used. We have the same problem. So I'll admit, I'm taking the opportunity to downsize it during this project, but I'm also working with the postgraduate admin team to let's reframe and rephrase it to a scholar zone. So for where academics may not have their own office, or they're going to be away from their office and teaching back and forth, why shouldn't they come in to that scholar zone and be there around the PGR students? Still have that barrier so that undergrads can't get to them, but is this a way that we can actually better utilise what in most libraries, most of the time, is dead space? So that's what we're going to deliver. Where are we? This week, we've got our freshers started, and they're the first students actually using the first half of it. So if you remember our diagram, there was the long, thin building. That was phase 1, and we opened that in July. And so our students are now using it for the first time. All of our book stock, and we did a bit of rationalisation, but we still have a lot of books, are currently on sabbatical, out off-site in the storage. We can record them for reserves. We then get the next phase back, and that's where the more exciting bits are, come summer 25. We're going to delay opening because we don't want to do some of the disruptive work during our students' end of year assessments. But we're looking to open up between May and July next year, and then come September have an official formal opening, and then exhibition in our new exhibition space, which is small but will be perfectly formed. So this is what it used to look like. This is the bit that we've redone this summer. So you can see just acres and acres of bookshelves on the left there, and some fairly standard 2010-ish kind of furniture. This is what that space now looks like. So these are the collaboration rooms that we've new built on the left-hand side, one of the seminar rooms at the end, and this is a fallout area from the seminar room for people to discuss and to test out some of the things that they've been taught. You'll see all the acoustics on the ceiling as well. We have the other side looking downwards, so you can see it's that mix of that kind of informal space, but then task chairs and tables. And at the very far end, which you can't quite see so well, hexagonal individual pod style study spaces. We've got everywhere there was a little corner, we've stuck a little study space. And on the ground floor, we're trying to make it that postgraduate world of work. So these are the kind of furnitures that you will find in middle to high end office blocks in the UK. So those kind of breakout sessions, the sofa sessions, the pods. But as I say, you've seen one study space, you've seen them all. What's coming next is a little bit more interesting. These are slightly lower definition artist impressions because the big ones will break the system. And this is what our new inquiry space looks like. So you see, there are bookshelves. There's lots of new study spaces around the edges. There's a really improved inquiries desk. The courtyard kitchen because where the sun is coming in there looks out into a wonderful, calm, peaceful courtyard that the students will be able to take their coffees and things to. Or on days like this where it's really nice, open the double door sliding and they can just get some fresh air, and it's that outside in, which also features into our book garden. And this is the only real social space that we're putting into the home library. Everything else is around collaboration or individual work. The book garden is where you just go out, hang out, take a break from your studies. Not every day will be a good day to open the doors on the sliding doors. It might be raining now and again, and that's where you go to the book garden. And we'll have images on the wall of kind of green plants and things. We have a lot of wood and greenery in the build, in the design as it is. So the book garden just is part of that. But also putting in a mock classroom. One of the main subjects that we teach is education. It's teaching teachers, K to 12 kind of for our American audience. They now have to do another 400 hours of reviewed practice before they can graduate. And so we're building them a mock classroom, we're building them a review screen where people can critique each other, as well as having all of the very strange things that they take out to schools to do projects on Vikings and things like that. So that's a very quick run through of what we did, how we got there. Really interested in taking any questions or thoughts, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how we're pivoting what a library is for the next generations of students. Linda, back to you.
Huge thanks for that, Fiona. We are going to take most of the questions after you've both spoken, but I will take one question now if anyone has one. I can't see any in the chat yet. In the meantime, I'll wait a few minutes to see if anyone's got a question. How hard was it to get the funding, Fiona? I mean, do the OFS do a lot of these kind of projects, or is it quite difficult to get the money out of them?
It's very difficult. You may have noticed that it was the 2022 to 2025 fund that they had. Yeah. So every now and again, if the government thinks it's got money, they'll do a 3-year plan budget for some of these organisations, and then you have to bid for that. Initially, it was going to be £6 million maximum, they had £82 million for every single university to bid for across the country. And it could have been for anything. Say we were one of 2 libraries who got funded, but certainly the only library who got the full level. And one of the reasons that we dropped the word library and the resource centre, one of the reasons that I highlighted those words is because that's what was important to the particular government that we had at the time of the bid. And it's really important, I think, that you actually understand your political masters and are happy to sell your soul to get money to actually do the right thing. They just don't need to do that. Oh dear, I forgot we're being recorded. Forget I said that. But honestly, swung
so
on your pride.
we have got one question, Fiona. It's not as silly as it sounds. Actually, someone's asked, was any European funding involved? And I have found out recently that there are still, in fact, British universities getting some European funding, which I didn't know. But did you get any European funding?
No,
Yes.
There was no funding available at the time that we were looking to do it. Is the answer? I'm afraid we looked at the European market about a year beforehand, and we'd considered putting something through. I even asked people like EBSCO, because they've got their sustainability fund, if they would give me the solar panels and things like that. So again, it's one of those things where we looked, but there wasn't the right fit for what grants were being offered at the time. But we're always looking at it because I've got phase 3 in my head. I know what I want to do now as soon as I think of the next summer.
Thank you. I have got some more questions now, but I'm going to go on to Beau and then we'll take these questions afterwards. So Beau, thank you very much again, Fiona. And Beau, would you like to share your presentation now, please?
Yes, can I get permission to share? Sorry, my headset just turned off.
Can you hear us?
You're muted, Beau. You're muted now.
Mute.
Hello, do I have sound?
Yeah, yes, you do.
And my slides are showing on the screen?
Yes, you're sharing your slides now.
So Linda mentioned that Fiona and I met about 10 years ago. Linda, do you remember what the context of that was? It was about space and libraries. I had given a tour of a University of Michigan library facility, a STEAM facility where we had performing arts within the library. So nice to be back talking about space. So let me start with some demographic information. You may have heard about the contraction of American higher education. While that may be true in some parts of the country, it is definitely not in the state of Florida. We have a lot of people and we are rapidly growing. In Central Florida, we have 2,000 people a week moving here from elsewhere. Our state is strongly supportive of higher education. We have 12 university level 4-year and doctoral programs, and then we have 28 2-year colleges serving nearly 1 million students. And our state also has 120 other higher education private institutions, including one research university. So a bit about our history. The University of Central Florida is the most important university you've never heard of. We were founded really because of Sputnik. What would become NASA was being built on the Space Coast here, and we already had major aerospace industry in the area, including Lockheed Martin. So really, we were built to do two things, and that was win the space race and win the Cold War, and we are still doing that. The figure on the screen is Citronaut. His body is an orange because we grow citrus here in Central Florida, and he has an alien head, Martian perhaps, wearing a space helmet that very much defines our region. We have 70,000 students. So every day is like Saturday in a European city that has a football team. It is that crazy at all times. We also have a large Hispanic population. We are designated by the U.S. Department of Education as a Hispanic serving institution. And about a fifth of our students are first generation college students. So I'm very proud of our research enterprise and also our ability to transform the lives of individuals and their families. We are comprehensive in our programs, but our doctoral programs are entirely in STEM. A bit about the libraries. I will be talking about the John C. Hitt Main Library, but we have many other libraries. We have a downtown campus, we have a hospitality management campus, we have a medical campus, and we also have our librarians on site in regional state college campuses. Those campuses, the two-year graduates represent about half of our enrollment. Here's where it all began, 1967. The only building on campus was the library and also everything else crammed into one building. In 1968, we had 2,000 students. The Great Expansion in 1984, we doubled the size of the library. We stuck a new addition on the back end. And the other campus units had other buildings on campus by this time, so they vacated the 1967 building and it became entirely a library space. So here's what we knew in 1984. We knew that the print book and bound serials were vital to academics. But what we didn't know is that 10 years later, the internet would change dramatically the nature of publishing and scholarship. We also didn't know that our enrollment would rapidly grow. In 1984, we had 9,000 students, and today we have 70,000 students. We, in fact, are limiting our growth to under 1% so that we have the resources to serve the students on our campus. So in 1984, it seemed like a great idea to double the size of our library to house books. And it all changed in 2018. So a bit about funding. Typically, a public university would have a library renovation, expansion, or new build through a state appropriation. But that is extremely difficult to do. Investment generally goes elsewhere. On our campus, state investment has been in our nursing program. We are building a new facility on our medical campus as the new home of our College of Nursing. And the other way to do it is through private giving. That is very difficult for us being a young university. We don't have the legacy of alumni and giving. So our model was through student fees. And all of the four-year universities, public universities in Florida, have students pay each semester a small fee for capital improvements. And these funds accumulate over the decades. They are invested in a variety of markets. And then the interest income can be spent on capital improvements. And the students get to vote. It is their money. They get to decide where to invest on our campus. We have done a very good job of communicating return on investment to our students, and they have generously funded thus far 4 stages of renovation. So here are our goals. I agree with everything Fiona said, and the benefit of Fiona going first is she can cover some of these things. Absolutely, we need to pivot with change, and we need to recognize our demographics. I will focus a bit more on just the practical side. We have a lot of students, and we need to transform the space to meet their needs. So our primary goal was book storage. We needed to remove the books from the floor in order to transform those spaces for learning. And in those learning spaces, we aimed for a variety of different study spaces. As Fiona said, students learned in very different ways. And we wanted social space. Libraries are not just an academic space, they're also a social space. And one goal of mine was to create social spaces that might draw in important constituencies that today don't visit the library. That's our faculty, graduate students, and staff on campus, and the community. We also wanted to enhance our facilities with technology and, of course, infrastructure. A 1967 building has a lot of wear and tear, and we needed to improve all of that and attempt to be more sustainable and green. Phases, and I will show pictures of these phases. It started with the building of the automated retrieval center, the book storage facility, followed quickly by a connection between the third wing of the library and the 1984 expansion. Phase 2, which we just completed, is to renovate one of the 2 books stacks floors. And we are now in the middle of renovation of the second major book stacks floor. So here's the ARC, the Automated Retrieval Center. It is robotic. Students or faculty put in a request in the online catalog. The request is received in the system, and the robot retrieves the book and returns it to the friendly person standing there. And within just 5 minutes or so, someone can have their book ready to pick up. What you see on the left side of the screen is a capacity for 1.25 million books. And on the right side, you see a lot of empty space. So we have room to grow. We had 2 million books on the floor in the library. So we need to do some weeding in order to make it all fit into the storage facility. And in the end, we were able to create 3,500 seats. Here it is, 1984, although I shot this picture in 2018. Both the third and fourth floors of our building looked like this. And here is the chaos and destruction I have caused. The space I just showed looked like this in June. And then here's an example of the third floor space, and the fourth floor will be similarly designed. We do have some books over there on the right portion of the screen, but this is a very active, collaborative learning environment. So what are some new spaces we created? So we had that third wing built, the arc. Well, the arc has a roof, and on the roof we put this beautiful new reading room. This is about 300 seats in here. This is on the 4th floor, and the vaulted ceiling takes it up to the 5th floor. Lots of natural light. And we are featuring Agati furniture. Agati is a company in Chicago. And Mr. Agati himself came to our campus and worked with the architects and students and helped design this space. The students have dubbed it the Harry Potter room. We also wanted to create group study rooms. There are never enough of these. We have, when we open the 4th floor next year, we will have 60 of these. We currently have 30, and a variety of different sizes from 2 all the way up to 16. There are QR codes on the doors, making it easy for a student to walk by and scan and book the room. But students book the rooms well in advance. We allow up to 1 week advance booking. And with 70,000 students, the rooms get booked. The rooms are 85% occupied across all operating hours. We open at 7 a.m., we close at 1 a.m. And the group study rooms are 100% occupied between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. So this is group study. We also are looking to build open study, as you saw in the picture of the 3rd floor a moment ago. Here's our design for the 4th floor. The 4th floor is not intended to be a collaborative space. I like to say that learning is noisy, and we need to be able to accommodate that. And one great joy of walking through that 3rd floor and all its noise is the peer-to-peer teaching and learning that's taking place. It's quite amazing. So for the 4th floor, we wanted a bit quieter space. And the architects have designed these reading islands, which mimic book stacks, but there will be no books on those. And here's an artist rendition. The idea here is that the wood and the fabric will absorb sound. And within the reading islands, we have fabric sound cones, which will prevent sound from carrying into the space and then carrying beyond the islands. We did want to try to attract faculty to our space and encourage them to design a curriculum that included the library. So we created a seminar room. And you will see in many of the pictures this bright colored wood. This is regionally sourced cypress bogwood. Cypress trees fall into the swamp. They're submerged for 100 years or more. They're pulled out, milled, and put into our library. This wood also has a great sound dampening effect. And our diversity of learning spaces. We have a social science experiment happening right before us. We involve students from the beginning of the process. They help us select furniture, and they are brutal in their comments on social media. We take all of that into account because, again, they have paid for this library. So we have group space, we have individual space, and I'll note too, you can see the cypress bogwood center top. I have funny names for all of our seating, and I call this one at the top European train seating. This is the second most popular seating type in our library, and we do, in the libraries I have run, we keep track of student preferences. We also administer annual surveys. The most popular, and I'm sorry I don't have a picture, is what I call American diner seating. And I saw something like that in Fiona's slides. Booths with fluffy furniture that can seat 4 students. Also note in the bottom right, that is a group, an individual soundproof booth. And there's a chair in there. We did not intend for those to have chairs. The students will always show us what we need to do. They dragged the chairs in there. So we ordered more chairs for these phone booths. Not as good as a TARDIS, but still pretty cool. So the left picture, way in the back, and this shot is intentional, we put a service point on our 3rd floor. And it's crazy, noisy. There are 1,000 students on that floor when we're at peak capacity. We wanted a service point. So this is the engaged learning floor. We wanted to put our new academic engagement unit here. So the students have quick access to our librarians. We have subject librarians, we have instructional librarians. We also partner with units on campus, such as the Writing Center, to help students with their writing projects. So it's one-stop shopping for students within our library. And of course, a cafe. Students have asked us for kitchen-like spaces, but we're not going there. It would be too difficult with the size of our student body. So we offered a cafe. Students have long asked for food and drink options. And I'm pleased that we were able to find an Orlando-based business to partner with us. And they contribute to the campus food pantry. We are very grateful for them being here. Another one of our goals was an event space. The library is called the heart of the campus, so we want to reclaim our intellectual status. And one way we can do that is through our events. The president of the university loves to film his inspirational videos here in this space. We also built a gallery next to our event space. And with this gallery, it is student focused. We have students curate exhibits based upon our special collections and archives. The university offers no curriculum in exhibit curation and preparation. So this is a way for the library to expand the curriculum. And this is something I'm looking to do more and more of. We have an important role to play in teaching and learning. And like Fiona's library and many others, technology. This podcast studio was installed in the summer, and our photography studio was installed last week. And one claim I make is that the library is the most inclusive space on campus. Students who are majoring in journalism, for example, will have access to spaces and technology like this. But if you're not a student in that college, you will not have access to that technology. So the library can be a place that serves all of the students, regardless of their field of study. Um, and as Fiona said, these aren't teaching spaces. Faculty are welcome to use it and design curriculum that incorporates it, but this is student first. This is exploration for the students, again, expanding the definition of learning on our campus. And when we complete the 4th floor next year, we will have additional technology such as XR and data visualization. And one more slide on technology. Again, students asked and we deliver. With so many students and such a large facility, students complain that it's difficult to find an open seat. So we have installed these occupancy sensors on the right, and they monitor Wi-Fi and 4 and 5G traffic. And it's very accurate. While it will not say which seat is open, it can pinpoint which small areas in the library have available seats. And finally, the future. Phase 4 is to expand that arc, but we're not going to put robots in. We have enough storage space for books forever. What we need is space for the physical collections, which we know will continue to grow for the next century, and that's archives and special collections. So we will design conventional steel stick shelving in that space, which will allow us to shelve large objects. Phase 5, we have designed, we are awaiting funding. Every 3 years, there's interest income for the students to vote on. We are hopeful that we will be able to renovate the ground floor and increase our social space. And some point in the future, when we figure out what the future looks like, we hope to renovate the 1st and 5th floors. And some ideas we have now are listed there on the screen. And here's my contact info and something about the picture. When the library used to be the only building on campus, our first university president, his office is what is now my office. So I'm holding a photo on the balcony. Smoking is no longer allowed, however, in the facility. And with that, I will conclude.
Huge thanks for that. That was absolutely magnificent. Thank you very much indeed. We have one question. Well, I will take one question for you, and somebody's asked about budget. So how do you budget these 4 phases and the future phases when you're kind of using the money as you get it? How does that work?
Preliminary designs were done a decade ago, and we had focus groups, but the information is a decade old. But we've done some preliminary designs, and we know what we need to do in terms of the infrastructure, what pipes and conduits and heating and cooling systems need to be replaced. So we know quite a bit. And once a floor is cleared out of its contents, it's an open box, it's a canvas. So we can very easily drop things in those spaces. And the spaces that we're currently building, there are no steel and concrete walls. They're glass, they're wood, they can easily come down. So we can pivot very quickly when we need to. So we have this in mind from the start. We have a good idea that about some things, like we don't need the floors store books anymore. So it's monitoring trends in academia that will largely influence our final designs.
Thank you. A question for both of you. Do you hire out or lend technological applications to the students, laptops and computers or tablets, anything like that? Do you? I'll start with Fiona. Do you let them borrow equipment?
We do, and one of the slides I showed had some lockers beside that social unit. Those are full of 24-hour known laptops, so students can come and get those. What we also know now are some VR headsets. We have some spaces put aside which are the right size for individual VR re-experimentation. I also have a multimedia counter which isn't in the library building, but that does all of the video, podcast, audio, recording, editing kind of equipment. And yeah, so they are all available that we loan out. We loan out for a week at a time, edit suite kind of Mac laptops. and obviously students with hardship we do support in very specific ways. But on the whole, we're trying to encourage students to do more. And part of my freshers talks is all about go and find this stuff and do it. You know, start a podcast around how scary it is to be at uni for the first time and share it. Because it doesn't matter what course you're doing, those are skills they're going to need as they progress.
Thank you. Beau, do you lend out equipment?
We do. Cables, chargers, battery packs. Students who forget those things when they come to the library. We also lend laptops, predominantly Windows machines, but we have a small number of Mac laptops as well. We have hundreds of them because of the size of our enrollment. We recently partnered with Central Information Technology to expand access. So the library is now responsible for all laptop and tablet lending to the campus, not just students, but also faculty who may need specialized software installed on a laptop. We also, beginning this summer, are receiving surplus laptops. So a laptop goes out of warranty after 3 years. It's still capable of running Windows 10 or 11. We make those available to students. Our new laptops in warranty also, like Fiona, could be checked out for a week at a time. The out of warranty laptops can be checked out for an entire semester. And we have, I believe, 150 of those. And at the start of a semester, within about 45, 60 minutes, they're all checked out. So students know to come to us to get those materials. That's part of our mission, access and affordability.
Thank you. And again, a question for both of you. In one of your slides, Beau, I think it was slide 25, in the background there was a sketch. It was one of the sketches. There was a sketch of a disabled student, a student on crutches. Do you have these two new libraries made any special provision for disabled students? And in that I include students with disabilities such as dyslexia and dyspraxia. Have you taken that into account, Fiona?
Yes, Beau used the word inclusion, and inclusion was at the central heart of the design that we gave to our architects. So one of the first things that we did was actually put in a lift that would now be able to take people in some of the larger wheelchairs that we're seeing. The old lift was a late 1960s Revenant, and the lift shaft was too narrow to do anything with. So absolutely innovation. We've also looked at, so every run of desks has a height adjustable double on there. So again, whether that's somebody who's got a wheelchair or it's just they've got some other posture issues, they're able to use those. The courtyard kitchen is going to be a mix of benching and seats. So again, the seats can be removed and people can just roam into that group having lunch together rather than being stuck at the end. The American style booths, and yeah, but we call them the diners as well. They're all designed, the table is just a little bit shorter. So again, people with chairs can roam up to them and still be part of the group, not hold to it. Dyslexia, dyspraxia, absolutely. I have named all of the spaces something which is to do with native fauna, because the amount of people who get stuck with numbers and get confused around what number they're supposed to be in. And therefore we've got some very simple words, some longer words. We have got those both audio described and written on our intranet and our booking pages. So we're trying to make sure that no matter which limitation you may feel you have, we have tried to deal with it. And I've noticed in the questions there's a lot of what UX did we do. We've worked with a lot of our students, but especially our students with disabilities group, who've been really active and have, as Beau said, they don't pull their punches when they're not happy with something. And so we've had them sign off on it, We're never going to be perfect for everyone, but they accept that we're doing our best, and it is around inclusion. It's not about you have a disability and we must do something for you. You're just part of the gang, and that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Beau, how would you answer to that?
Everything Fiona said. I will add that we have an internal physical accessibility team, and there's a campus-wide digital accessibility team, and one of our library department heads serves on that committee. So we are monitoring all of this. I've taken a lot of notes, Fiona, on what you're doing. I love the names versus numbers. I'll take that back to our team. So yes, we do think about these things.
Thank you. So this question was actually for Fiona, but I'm going to ask you both it. It's quite a long question. It's amazing that you spoke about improving your desks for inquiries. I work at the University of Bristol, and we're having some university redesigns at the moment, and our management seem to want to make our inquiries area smaller and front-facing staff less. Did you consider this at all, or was it always important to keep this? I would say it was one of the most important things. So Beau, would you like to start with that?
I want to reduce the number of service points because it's confusing to our guests. But we still need service points. And it's not just on our main floor, the entrance floor, but as I showed, we have that service point on another floor in the library. So we are thinking about that. And we offer virtual services, chat with a librarian, and we know that student is 20 feet away, but they prefer chatting. We will accommodate them. But we still maintain hours. The traditional reference service, we aren't doing that anymore. We've moved to a research consultation service just based upon the types of questions that students are asking.
Thank you. And Fiona, I mean, that question was directed at you in the first place.
Yeah, I've got to be very careful then. Yeah, we've been a converged service now for 5 years. So I've brought my IT service point, my multimedia and my library teams first line together. So we get a lot of traffic on I can't go onto the Wi-Fi, my laptop's not working, why isn't this working? So rather than have the very fixed desk that we used to have, we've now got 2 large ones. So 2 people will sit there and a stand-up podium, because it's much easier sometimes if somebody brings a laptop to actually stand up. And then 2 smaller desks beside that for the more detailed, involved. Oh, this is going to take a while. Let's take you over there. I've got them one facing out to the door, so the double one faces more towards the door. It kind of pivots that way. The other 2 pivot to our central staircase. So if you were to come in from our ground floor entrance, the first thing you see when you get to that top floor is a friendly staff member. But I've also got a large touchscreen navigational and help directory sign there, because again, what we're seeing with a lot of students is almost that anxiety of asking, of not wanting to be seen to be asked. So part of what we've done, we've put that where the inquiries team can see it. So if it looks like students are struggling, they can just happen to walk past and just initiate a support conversation. So it's absolutely around providing the support that our customers will want, but also making sure that we're a little bit on our front toes and out wandering and intercepting the lost and the lonely.
Thank you.
I'd like to add, even though I would like to reduce the amount of service points, especially when we renovate the main floor. Whims of the Dean of Libraries matter not. It is user behavior. We actually added a service point in the past year, and that's for what we call the print zone. We have printers and scanners, and the bulk of our questions, I need paper, I don't know how to do this. So we accommodate service requests into our model.
Thank you. And Beau, you talked about students organising exhibitions. I've spoken recently to some librarians in Australia, and they say they can't get students involved in anything at all anymore because they're so busy working for their degrees and earning money on the side as well. But have you found any difficulty in getting student participation?
No, we have a lot of students. We have a
That's
lot of humanities students who are interested in doing this. We also have undergraduates who are seeking a career in libraries and archives. So before they go off to library school with their archive certificate, they work with us. We have exhibits planned well into the future, and we know we can slot students in. In fact, we've had volunteers. We had someone put on an exhibit about the history of women in aviation, a great topic, being surrounded by aerospace.
Thank you. And Fiona, sorry, go on. Fiona, do you have difficulty in getting students to participate?
It is hard to get them involved in something that they're not passionate about. It's got to be said. So you have to find what they're interested in. So we have no problem at all engaging with those student groups. So the accessibility group, they are there. We know who to talk with. It is hard to entice people. We've tried food. Pizza often works. So come in for a couple of hours and do things. But as Beau says, it's can you spark the imagination to say, this is actually a great final year project. You can show all of these skills, these competencies, these learning outcomes by being involved in this. And we have a lot of people helping, particularly in the multimedia centre, which is our equivalent of the sound studios, the TV studios, the known equipment. Because as Beau says, they want to go into that kind of world, and to have something on their CV which stands out compared to every other graduate coming out of universities. But it's how you sell it that needs to be there. And I have to say, having a helpful academic, having an academic who gets that message is invaluable as well.
So we will begin to implement a much larger experiential learning program. I've run these at previous institutions. And with our new technology studios, here's another opportunity. It's students will train students. We will create new student supervisor manager positions, a manager of the podcast studio, a manager of the photography studio. Students who want to use that space will need to meet with the manager, learn how to use the equipment, and then they're authorized to book the room. Our students have a working title, they have a resume item, and we can use our institutional repository as an e-portfolio for them with a durable URL on their resumes. So there's a lot we can do for learning and professionalism.
Thank you. This is a question just for Fiona. Where did the idea of the book garden come from? Was it suggested by students?
To be honest, I stole a student idea. So Winchester is very renowned for what I like to call the hippy drippy 60s fallout. So we're very into environmental, we're very into peace and love and all those kind of things. And there was a little half stairway that students decided was going to be their community board for green and sustainable activities. And they called it the book garden, and they put a notice board up, we put some bean bags in, and there was lots of plants. And it was so popular. They would also smuggle the cat into it. On more than one occasion, I'd walk down and there was Casper just sat there looking at me. So what we're doing is we're taking that concept, we're making it bigger, and we're actually driving into that outdoors, indoors, nature is good. This is your space to relax, and recharge, kind of thing. So yes, I have completely stolen a student initiative, which really hit the mark for their peers.
Students will always show us what we need to do. Fiona, I'd like to comment on the stick a chair wherever there's space. I love that picture. Um, but I have a recommendation. Turn the chair around so it faces out. So we installed chairs and windows, and within a few days, the students had moved all of the furniture to be able to look outside.
Those are 360 chairs. So they rock a little
Perfect.
bit and you swivel. So, and one of the other things that
Good.
we did, the paneling that you see is actually the side of a collaboration room, and that's sound absorbing. And again, talking to our inclusion group, those patterns are actually quite helpful for some people who are beginning to become a little bit sensory overloaded. So that ability to either people watch into the corridor, look out into the courtyard that we've got, or just that almost patterned texture is part of some of the thinking that we're doing. But yeah, they're lovely chairs. They swivel 360, and they have a slight rock to them. So
I will be
yeah,
telling our architect swivel chairs. Thank you.
absolutely swivel. Give them the choice.
To our audience, can I just say I've used all your questions now. If you want to ask any more, you have a few minutes to ask them. But Beau and Fiona, and I don't mind who starts this, you've both gone to great lengths to say the library is something other than a library. The librarian is someone other than a librarian. So will that continue into the future? And if so, will people still continue to be proud of libraries and proud of being a librarian? Or will they call themselves something else and call the building something else as well? Who would like to start?
I'll
You don't
jump
ask
in.
the small questions, do you? Um,
Sorry.
We're already seeing a change
Yes.
in health sciences librarianship. The new term's informationist. So there is an evolution. But there's something special about our profession. It's a service profession. People choose to do this work, um, not particularly lucrative work, because they're passionate about it. So we will always be able to draw those employees, and they will do different things. Um, but the definition of libraries will evolve.
Thank you. And Fiona?
I have to admit, the reason we dropped the word library from our grant was because that we know that people have a certain mindset of what that means, and that didn't fit with their idea of future learning, students, employability, high value subjects. You know, unfortunately, they still sometimes see it as historians surrounded by lots of physical books and things. Where we are looking, and yes, our health sciences people are already looking at being knowledge agents and knowledge officers when you go into practice for that kind of thing. Data and digital are the skills and the competencies to go forward with. And that's what libraries have been teaching for a century or more. That's where we are. We just need to pivot to help people understand that we have a fantastic legacy, and there is absolutely a need for a Harry Potter room with lots of books and people being able to be studious and special collections and archives. But actually, information science is the groundwork of what all of this is about, and helping people navigate that world, whether it's in higher education or with the citizens, to make sure that they have the best possible services in governments. I don't think there's a better profession that you could be in. But whether that's a librarian in 15, 20 years' time, I'm not sure.
Thank you.
In the 1990s, the term cybrarian was floated. That didn't stick. Uh, Library is durable. Uh, we're still doing the same things. We may not call it cataloging, but there's still a need for data and metadata and discovery. Um, we still have these information science principles at our core. I don't see that diminishing over the next few generations.
Huge thanks to both of you for two very fascinating presentations that were different from each other, even though you agree on many things. You have kept your audience throughout, so congratulations on that. Virtually nobody's left yet. These recordings will, of course, be available to a much wider audience, so there's several hundred people registered for this. But thank you very much again for giving up your time today, for enlightening us in such an entertaining way. And Fiona, thank you also for missing a meeting about your new library, which is rather ironical. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Leaves me to say really thank you from the Greater Brill as well, Beau and Fiona and Gold Leaf as always. Magnificent presentations and really exciting for the new generation of students, definitely. I would go back to one of your universities. Leaves me to say that I will send all of the recordings, I will send the slide deck and all the information on this webinar to everyone who registered, of which there were nearly 300 people. So the next webinar in our series will be in November. It will be on artificial intelligence, and I'm hoping that many of you will join us for that as well, a very important topic. So thank you very much, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks for joining, and we hope to see you again in our next webinar in the series. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.